can't let them bother.
It's funny how that happens, because some people are more prone to it and some people could have a certain resistance.
Everybody said, what? I mean, all his mates died very early in the piece, and Dad was pretty upset. Yeah, he had one spot in his lung, and they said, you should have been more advanced than that, and been poisoning and all that. None of that, just died of old age. Well, kidney failure 3 days later.
Most of their lives.
To 99, right? Yeah. You go.
So, OBS,
So your
this
mum
is
and
a
dad,
screen that I can shut all the seven.
Daddy's mum's still alive. She's at least in this whole kidney.
Oh,
She's
you-
94 years of age.
Yeah,
Little
she's
slipper.
Yeah.
So if anyone
I
finds
do every week, every Thursday I spend a bit of time with her.
Yeah,
that's the
cool.
audio.
So my father passed away, he was 12 years older.
This is not coming through.
Hey, do you reckon I tried to look it up, but
Hasn't been processed yet. I just got my foundation license today.
Oh, good.
So I understand it'll take a week or two.
What about webcasting or something?
Have something.
Yeah, paperwork's been uploaded.
Yes, I got an acknowledgement for that, thank you.
Already?
Just an acknowledgement that's been submitted. Thank you.
We'll have crosses on the floor.
It's order, mate. Don't think it's humid.
No.
Let me go and
Thank you
get rid
very
of this.
much.
Geez, it's the quietest I've ever heard.
What's that?
Quietest I've ever heard them.
Yeah. It's the easiest way to shut people up. Turn the camera on.
No, we've got the
No
noise
microphone.
Oh, actually, speaking of microphones.
You're not dressed.
You haven't been to makeup yet either.
That's right.
We haven't got that much time. Oh, so will you, don't worry.
Right, welcome everyone.
At Channel 9, they got people to do that. You know, they lapel you all up, put the...
They're usually good looking.
Oh, yeah, they are.
I was always a guest of Hey Hey at Saturday morning.
And I'd seen the whole...
Now I'm a YouTuber as well.
Yoo-hoo!
Content creator. Could I ask you guys to put your phones on silent?
We were smoking cigarettes.
No.
Don't you...
Be careful now. You could lose your job over that.
Please.
Okay,
Yeah, we're streaming
so
Oh, yeah.
already.
another matter of protocol, since we're going live to air, can I just ask you all not to interject and, you know, like wisecracks and things like that, because we have a wider audience and this is probably going to be recorded as well. So just keep in mind that. And also, if you've got any questions, Peter will give you opportunities to ask questions in a more structured way rather than just interjecting with them. Okay, so there's that. Before we do continue, I'd like to welcome a visitor tonight. Two visitors, actually. James, who turned up, just walked in the door last Friday night, and today he passed his foundation license test. So congratulations there, and looks like he might become one of us. You know. And also Stefan, live from the Netherlands, and likely to become a new local ham, and hopefully a member. Your call sign again?
Papa Echo 1, Sierra Bravo Mike.
Papa Echo 1 Sierra Bravo Mike. There you go. Okay, so tonight's activity, you may well have read read your email. Peter's going to apprise us of the new arrangement in the the Kenjul radio room, the shack, that's undergoing redevelopment as we speak. So, welcome, Don. Hope you got a note from your mum.
My mother's deceased, I'm afraid.
Yes.
So
All right. So let's move on. Remember, we're live on YouTube. Take it away, Pete.
Right, okay. Is that audio good, Rex?
Yep.
Okay. All right, welcome everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about the update of the shack, the Kenjul radio room. And I thought I'd start with just a bit of a history about why it's called the Kenjul radio room. So Ken was a long-term member of our club. Ken's the one in the foreground. Ken was a long-term member of our radio club, a past president, secretary, treasurer and committee member, and a big contributor to the radio club. Ken was a DXer, and as you can see, he'd worked back in the days before FT8 and all those sorts of things. He'd worked every country on phone, and he was short of 4 on CW when he passed away in 2017. Right, so that's why the room is called the Ken Jewell Radio Room. Now, the aims of our update, why we did what we did, or why we're doing what we're doing. We're not finished yet. So, firstly, we wanted to improve the user experience. So we wanted to make it easier for people to use and get more people in the shack. We then wanted to improve the supportability. So what I mean by that is that when it breaks, we want to be able to fix it easily and not have to redesign it when it breaks. And we then wanted to set the shack up so that it was easy for new members that weren't familiar with a computerised environment to transition to that environment at their own pace. So in other words, the shack would work standalone without any computers, and you could add computers to do, or you could turn the computer on and turn the appropriate software on to do however little or however much you'd like. And I'll cover that later. Okay, so to improve the user experience, we decided that we needed to minimise the clutter. So by minimising the clutter, I mean get all of the things that shouldn't be in front of the operator off the bench and away from the operator. And the sorts of things I'm talking about are things that don't contribute to the operator doesn't have to touch. So we're talking about power supplies, we're talking about the linear amplifier where we could put the bulk of the amp under the bench, we could have a remote control head, those sorts of things. We then wanted to position the equipment in such a way that it was logical, and these will all make more sense when I show you the photos later. And the big one is that we wanted to simplify the antenna switching so that it was effectively transparent to the operator. Okay, as far as improving the supportability of the thing, the first thing we needed to do was improve the cable management. Now, the KJRR has sort of developed, there's been a number of people involved over quite a long period of time, and the cables had been layered, if you like. And it became very difficult to, if you had a fault, it became very difficult to trace a cable from one end to the other. So, and there was a lot of cables there which served no purpose. So we needed to get rid of those as well. So that was probably the biggest task in the shack itself. Okay, we then wanted to separate the multi-band antenna matching components. Now I'll explain that later when I show you a photo of what we had previously, and you'll see the reason why we wanted to do that, and that was from a supportability point of view. Okay, and then we needed some documentation, so we needed a station manual. Now that station manual won't be produced until we've finished the work that we're doing. And hopefully it shouldn't be much more than a manufacturer's manual, because the thing will work the way the manufacturer intended it. There's no tricks. Plus a few block diagrams and some just general information about the way that things are configured. Okay, now to make the environment easy for people to transition to a computerised environment, we need to standardise on the software that we use in the shack. So for our logging and our radio control, we've standardised on Ham Radio Deluxe. For our on-screen rotator control, we're going to standardise on a package called PST Rotator. For our digital modes, we're going to standardise on WSJTX Improved, which is different from, but not significantly these days, from WSJTX. So any of you that are using WSJTX, I'd strongly recommend that you go over to the improved version, which is almost the same in terms of its look and feel, but it's got some nice features which the standard WSJTX package doesn't have. And the author is very responsive to change. So it's written by a guy who's not involved with he was, but no longer involved with the WSJTX development team, because there was that much work involved in just keeping the mods to his own package going. Okay, and the contesting software that we've standardised on is going to be N1MM Plus. Now, since the I won't call it the demise, but it's effectively the demise of VKCL. We've got no alternative but to move forward with something that everybody uses. And all of these packages were chosen because they all integrate with each other as well. So there's no, gotchas that we don't know about. And the majority of us use these packages, this suite of packages at home. Okay, so let's have a look at what we had. So there's a picture of the shack, and it was effectively two shacks previously. The reason, and we had two HF operating positions. So we had 160, 80 and 40 on our IC 7610, and one of those radios on the left hand side is an IC 7300 and the other is a IC 9700, which is a VHF UHF radio. Now the problems that we had and that we needed to address were, and I should explain that the reason why it was set up that way was that all our low band antennas would only handle 100 watts. So we were concerned that somebody would turn the linear, if we had everything into the linear, we were concerned that somebody would accidentally turn the linear on those lower bands and let the smoke out of the antennas. So we separated the antennas. Unfortunately, and that was going to be an interim measure until we upgraded the low band antennas. And unfortunately, the low band antenna, or fortunately, the low band antennas worked very well. They were a credit to Ken DQW who set them up. But only being 100 watts was a problem, and we were a bit reticent to just cut them off because we knew that the replacement time was going to be considerable. But in the end, we had to bite the bullet. So that's what we've done. Okay. When you look at those layouts, the things that confused, the feedback that the committee got from members, and the thing that confused members that were trying to operate it was, firstly, and these might sound like trivial things, but they were major obstacles to a newcomer. If you look at the two radios that are on the VHF and HF position, who can tell me from that photo which one's which? Unless you're up close and you actually look at the radio, you can't tell that one's a VHF, UHF radio, the other's a HF radio, HF. And for the context, to keep things in context, we're going to treat 6 metres as HF. So 6 metres will be available from the new HF position. Right, so I'll just point out a couple of things from this. Will that camera move, Rex?
It's already on.
Oh, okay. Firstly, there's a couple of microphones plugged in here now, but for quite a while there wasn't any microphones plugged in. And if someone wanted to operate the thing on voice, they had to go and find the microphone and plug it in. Now, the reason that the microphones weren't plugged in was because they got in the road with the keyboard. Now, the problem is not keyboards and microphones, the problem is not enough clear space on the desk. And that was one of the things that we had to address, was to fix the clear space on the desk so we don't have all this clutter. The other thing that was confusing was that this rotator controller here is for the VHF tower, and it was sitting right next to the HF rig. And the rotator controller for that HF rig was over here on the other desk. So people would have been naturally confused as to which rotator controller controlled what, if you weren't aware of the situation. You can't see it in this photo, but the linear amplifier was actually tucked in on top of the desk about here. And because it was so large, it sat forward, and you couldn't look at the screen on the linear amplifier in a hurry. You actually had to push your seat back and lean over to see the linear. So that was an issue as well. So they're the sorts of issues that we wanted to address. We haven't attacked the VHF, UHF operating position as yet. So basically the intention is to have one HF operating position that covers all bands from 160 through to 6 metres, and the VHF operating position which covers 2 metres through to 1296. Right, let's move on to the new layout. Okay, so this is what the shack's going to look like. The HF and the 6 metre operating position is going to look like. We've got the radio. We've got the rotator controller that's associated with the directional antennas that we use on from 30 through to 10 metres. We've got the controller for the linear amplifier. These two boxes I'll talk about later, but for general operation, people won't need to even touch those. So basically what we've done is we've put a shelf in. That shelf allows us to slide the keyboard back under the radio. It allows us to put a paper log in here, a logbook. It allows us to put the mouse, I should say, in the gap. It also, this was just put there for the photo, but one day we'll get a smaller key, a paddle, I should say, and a standard paddle will slide under that shelf. It's been designed to take a standard paddle. The other thing that we'll probably buy in the future is a second VFO knob for the USB VFO knob for the 7610, which will slide under that gap as well. That's what the height was designed to do. Now, that second VFO control allows you to, when you're operating split frequency, it gives you control of the main the receive frequency on that knob, gives you control of the transmit frequency on the second VFO. The other thing it allows you to do in a contest environment is it allows you to slide the keyboard out. You can actually tell that remote VFO, that control, which VFO it controls. So you can slide the keyboard out, you can sit that VFO knob right next to the keyboard. So when you're operating, you're not reaching to the radio, everything's on the keyboard and the tuning control's right next to the keyboard. Right. Okay, so that's and this will be reflected on the VHF, UHF position as well in time, but the changes to the VHF, UHF position are a lot easier. We don't have to pull out reams of cable to do that. Right, the other thing we did was we mounted the screens off the wall, so we got rid of the feet. You might ask why the gaps are between the screens, because they do look better when they're sitting next to each other. The screens are potentially too small. It'd be nice to go the next size up screen. So at some stage they'll be replaced and they'll be sitting next to each other. Okay, all right. Is there any questions about the layout and what we're trying to achieve?
Any labels on the antenna switches?
Oh yeah, I'm just about to.
No, okay.
Yep, that's the next bit. That's the big bit. Okay, so when we move on to improve supportability, that was a couple of photos of the box which is on the outside wall, and it's a work of art in terms of the engineering that went into it, and it's very efficient, but it's very hard to maintain. And like the guy that built it's no longer with us, and everything was built in the one, rather than segmenting things so that you could test it easily, everything was built in the one box, which made it very difficult to maintain. So this was the reason why we took so long to get moving on the project, because we had to make a decision on how we sorted this problem out. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. Here's a diagram of what we're working with at the moment. So stage one, which is virtually complete, we've got our 7610, we've got our PW2 amplifier, and the PW2 has an inbuilt antenna switch. So 6-port antenna switch. The radio tells the amplifier which frequency it's on via this CI5, which is the ICOM interface bus. You then tell the amplifier, when you set it up, which port is used for which band. Okay, so in our case, we'll set the 6 ports up for 160, 80, 40, and because of our Yagi on the tower, it has 2 feed lines, one for 30, 17 and 12 metres, the other for, hang on, I've got the same label there, sorry, that's my mistake. It should be 20, 15 and 10 on the second input. And then we've got 6 metres as well. Now that's what we're going to run with initially. And the reason why the project was got bogged down was because we had a part interface, but because our 160, 80 and 40 metre antennas were one antenna with that was reconfigured in that box that I showed you to give us 160, 80 or 40 metre performance. So on 40 metres it was a dipole. On 80 metres I think it was a vertical, top-loaded vertical. So the inner and outer of the coax was tied together and there was a tuner. And the same happened on 160. So it became a top-loaded vertical on 160. And it had tuned counterpoises on 80 and 160 metres as well. The problem was, for mere mortals like us, it was a bit hard to understand which bits went with which band. So if we go with that same configuration again, and that'll be a subject for discussion, we need to have individual cabinets or sections within the cabinet which adjust the matching for that band, so that out of that cabinet comes a feed line for 160, a feed line for 80 and a feed line for 40 metres. And there'll need to be a control line that goes in there that tells it which band we're on. And then that goes into a standard antenna switch. It can go straight in here. Okay. The problem with this sort of configuration is that's great until you introduce low noise receive antennas, which is what we'll be doing. There's some low noise receive antennas out there which will need to be integrated into the system. This no longer has the capability of supporting those. So stage 2 will be a remote antenna switch which will sit outside. So instead of the antenna switching being done in the linear will just have, it'll be a 2-port device, so it'll have one input and one output, and the antenna switch will do the smarts. Now the antenna switch that we've chosen, as soon as you do that, you then need to have a controller to talk to the antenna switch to tell it what you want it to do. Okay, so that's the configuration that we're working towards. That's what we've got, well, we'll have effectively today. The biggest problem with this sort of configuration, and everybody at home has the same problem, is that you end up with all of these coaxes coming into your shack, and that's where the mess is in most shacks, is the coax cables that, you know, I'm not sure how you've got them in, whether you've, you know, bored holes through window frames or done whatever. The best thing that you can do, if you've got a number of antennas, even on an ordinary suburban block, is remote that antenna switch. And you only have to, you know, you've got a shack in your house, you've probably got a garage that's in the centre of the block or somewhere. That's the best spot for the antenna switch. You can run all the cables into the antenna switch. You can spread them out so that you could put things in a little rack so that you can work on it easily. Invariably, when you put them in a shack, they're jammed up behind the amplifier or the switches under the bench, and you're climbing under the bench and pulling to try and test things. Whereas you can just go outside, plenty of room, disconnect things, put an antenna analyzer on it or whatever you need to do. So if you're designing a station from scratch, do yourself a favour and think about that, because that was the best thing I ever did, was put my antenna switch remote from the shack. And my antenna switch is a lot more complex than this. It's got 24 ports and 2 radios, so it's 2 by 24. So you can imagine there's a lot of switching, there's a lot of cables, and it's really easy to maintain because it's in a rack and it's remote. So I only need effectively 1 cable for each radio from that point to the shack. Okay, does that's sort of the guts of it. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so how we achieved the antenna switching in the second stage was that we opted to go for a microham product, and it's called a microham trio. So the trio consists of two parts. It consists of the antenna switch and it consists of the controller box. So they're the two extra boxes that you could see on that previous diagram. There's a single Ethernet cable that runs between, for the control, it runs between the switch and the controller. And then there's a connection into the radio so that we get some band data and some PTT and things from the radio. Okay. Under normal circumstances, if you're not using the receive-only antennas on the low bands, then you won't have to touch this, or you won't have to touch the controller. You won't see the switch. The switch will be outside in a cabinet. The controller will sit on the bench next to the radio. But if you're not operating the low bands for DX principally, then you won't need to even touch that. That'll be transparent to you. Okay. So that's sort of the hardware in a nutshell. Now, I'll just move along to the software that I spoke about before. So you'll just see right, this is PST rotator. So basically this will run on the PC and there'll be a serial connection to the rotator, to our Green Heron rotator controller. Now, once you've used this, you'll never go back to using a standard rotator controller. But people that are new are going to have the option of using they don't have to turn the PC on, they don't have to turn this software on, they can just use the standard rotator controller. But the advantage that this gives you is that it frees up your hands to do other things while the antenna's turning. So this is a screenshot of the one that I've got two of these set up at home, one for each radio. Now, basically, what it allows you to do is you can click on a compass bearing, and the thing will just go to that compass bearing. Now, you don't have to. So the advantage of that is that you can be doing something with your radio, and you go, I need to shift the beam. You can look at that, go click, and then go back to what you're doing on your radio, and the thing does it for you in the background while you're doing what you need to do. So that's the way that we're all familiar with. You can put in a bearing and hit go. It will go to that bearing for you. You can put in a grid square and it will go to that bearing. It'll do the sums for you, work out the bearing, away it goes. You can have presets. Click on one of those, it'll go to the short path bearing for that. If you want to go long path, there's none of this, I've got to swing the beam around to 180 degrees. You just click on the long path, short path, long path button, and the thing will just go around to the long path bearing. Click on it again, it comes back to the short path bearing. You can also put in a country, a DXCC country, and the thing will go to that country. You can put in a partial call sign. So rather than have to scroll through that list, you could put in, let's say, 3Y0. Put in 3Y, and the thing will come up and give you all the 3Y options, so you don't have to sort of scroll through the list. The other thing that you can do is you can put in a full call sign, click on the QRZ thingo, and the thing will actually go to qrz.com, get the grid square of the station of the call sign that you've put in there, work out the bearing, and then sit there waiting for you to click the go button to go to that.
Wow.
So it's really good. So that's why I say you'd never. Oh, you can even click on the local time at the other end of the path, and the thing will bring back the local time as well. that, I'm not sure what the current price is. I think I paid about 22 euros for it
Yeah.
when I bought mine. But that's probably 4 or 5 years ago now at least. Best 25 euros I ever spent. You can use it, you can have as many instances of that as you like in your shack. It's registered to you, so it's got your call sign up the top. There's also an ASL version which you get for the same price. So you get them all bundled together. The ASL version will track the moon, the sun, you name it. So you know, where we see guys writing their own software for controllers to track moons and suns and all of that sort of thing, when you're doing that, you know, moon bounce type stuff, it's a bit like reinventing the wheel, because all you need to do is pay your 30 euros or whatever for that, connect it up to your ASL rotators and go track the moon, and the thing just does it for you. If there's an error between, so this is an error that's caused by the geometry of the dish or the way the dish is being constructed, you can actually plot those errors, those mechanical errors, and enter the errors into the program, and it will track the moon more accurately based on the geometry of your system. Okay, so that's PST Rotator, fantastic bit of software, I love it. Okay, so here's our, now this looks a bit different to the ham radio deluxe that we've got in the shack at the moment, and the reason being is that we haven't upgraded to the current version in the shack. So this is the current version of ham radio deluxe, version 6.9. But it's more than a logging program. You know, people sort of try and compare ham radio deluxe to other logging programs, and it's a unfair comparison because it's not the same. Ham radio deluxe is a suite of programs. I'll just explain the way I use the logging program and the way that we would use it in the shack based on operating on HF. So this was a screenshot I did yesterday. What I've got here is the last contacts on my log up until sort of whenever it was, 10 o'clock yesterday morning. This is the DX cluster. Now, this all needs to be the subject of another presentation because it's a whole separate topic. But for those that aren't familiar, a DX cluster is a list of stations that are on the air at the current time that have been uploaded to this site by people all over the world. So effectively you can look at this and you can see here's the call signs of the DX stations, frequency, the time, and who spotted them. Now what Ham Radio Deluxe allows you to do is, if I do a single click on that particular station, it will then load that into the call sign window up here. Won't do anything else except it will go to your logbook and it will tell you where you've worked that station and whether you've got confirmation. So here we've got the bands from 160 through to 6 metres, and you can actually, I think you can add to, yeah, you can add to that. You can put the VHF bands if you want to. Here's essentially the 3 different modes. So you've got CW, phone and digital. It then brings you up some basic information about this guy, what his name is, where he lives, the state, the US state, the grid square, and how far it is and the bearing. So it'll just do, as soon as you click on one of these spots, it will just do that. It then gives you information about the country. So this is contacts that you've had with this particular station. This is contacts you've had with a particular country. So if you look here, you can see that I've worked the US on digital from 160 through to 6 metres. They're all ticks. Where there's a cross, it means that I haven't worked them on that mode or band. Where there's a little inverted triangle, that means that I've worked them but it hasn't been confirmed. So you can just see at a glance exactly what's going on. Now, I used to, if there was a D expedition that you were looking at working on lots of bands, lots of slots, then you had to create a spreadsheet and keep the spreadsheet handy, and then as you work them, you just cross them off on the spreadsheet. Whereas this, you can see it at a glance. Now, that's a single click on a spot. Doesn't do anything else, doesn't control the radio. You do a double click on the spot, it'll then take the radio to that frequency automatically, and that mode. So it's a very integrated package, and it's getting better by the day. They transitioned from version 6.8 to 6.9. It was a total rewrite, and I held back for 6 months because there was issues. But they've been getting all those issues out, and it's very stable and it's really good now. It's also got, I have mine set up with a grey line map. That there is a band map which basically is set to the frequency that your radio is on. So as you change bands on your radio, this band map changes. And what it does is it takes the spots out of this cluster and presents them in a more visual way. So you can see exactly who's on and what frequency they're on. You can click on one of those spots and it will control the radio as well. Now, that's only a small portion of what it'll do, but it's a very powerful piece of software. But you've got to buy it. It's not free, but it's not expensive. It's, you know, you pay about $100 for that, and that's a once-off. And for your $100, you get lifetime bug fixes. If there's a new feature added, then you don't get that with the lifetime. You pay I pay $25 a year, and that gives you the support package, which I've never had to use, but I was happy to pay it because I could see that the software development that's gone into this, there's I think for the last 3 years they've been developing version 6.9, and they've had anywhere from 3 to 5 developers, software developers, working on the package. So you can imagine the amount of money that's been poured back into it to get it to the point that it's at. Okay, we'll move along to the next software package that gets a flogging in the shack, and that's WSJTX improved. Now this looks very much like standard. Just ignore that panel there for the moment. So standard WSJTX improved consists of that panel and the spectrum display, the waterfall. It's outside of the scope of this talk to explain the differences between the improved version and what have you. We'll do that at a later date. This is a package called JT Alert, and what JT Alert does, these days there's that much information that's available to you as an amateur when you're chasing DX in particular, that you need to be able to process it quickly, and if it's in tabular form like that, you can't process it quickly if something's happening quickly. Basically, all this does is takes this information here and presents it in a way that you can identify it quickly. So all of these D codes are exactly what's here. It's just they're presented in a different way, and then they're coloured so that you can make a decision quickly on what to do with them. So these are all countries that I've worked before. These are all countries that are on this particular band and mode. these are countries which I've probably worked because I haven't kept the sync between the... You've got to sync your logbook to this to make it accurate. And I probably haven't done a sync because I've worked all of these, but they just show up at the moment. But let's just... So this is the green and yellow is a country that's... or a station that's calling CQ, and a station that I haven't worked before, a country that I haven't worked on this band. This guy's in a contact with someone else, but he's a country that I haven't worked before. Now, rather than have to look at all of that, you can then have another window which only shows you the coloured ones, which is what that is. So if you looked up there, you would find exactly the same coloured ones in that row. So it stops you looking at all of that, you just look at all of that. And then if somebody calls you, it'll appear over here. So if it was anything like this big 6 metre opening that we had last year, you just couldn't process what was there if you were looking at that. All you needed to do was look at this and go, they turn red, they all go red, but they're red and yellow if they're countries that you haven't worked before. So you just have to look at that block and go, they're the ones I haven't worked before. There's none of this scrolling through here and trying to work out from... Like, oh, sorry,
How
Lee.
does Grid Tracker work? Because I've been using Grid Tracker, but this sounds like it might be better. Or complementary.
Yeah, Grid Tracker's got more bling. So Grid Tracker's got the map and all of that sort of stuff. I've used Grid Tracker, but I've never ever spent a lot of time with it. So, and I know people have got it that swear by it. And it was something I was going to revisit at some stage, but that's been working really well for me. The only thing with Grid Tracker is that it takes up a lot of screen real estate. So you run out of screens very quickly. Yeah, run out of screen space very quickly. Okay, and the last one is N1MM. So N1MM is a contest logging program for CW phone, RTTY. It can be as complicated or as simple as you want to make it. Now, I've just put all these windows up to show you what it's capable of doing, but if you wanted to set the thing up like VKCL, you would have that window there, which is your input window, and that window there, which is your running log. One thing I found really handy in the last Oceania contest was this band map. So this is set up for 2 radios. You've got 2 input screens. So that's the input screen for your left-hand radio. That's the input screen for your right-hand radio. That's the band map for your right-hand radio. But you can set the thing up so that it's not receiving spots like Ham Radio Deluxe. All it's doing is actually logging frequencies that of stations that you've actually contacted or that you've attempted to contact. And it will bring up the call sign of each of those stations on those frequencies. Now, the advantage of that is that when you're tuning across the band, looking for new stations to work, you can waste a lot of time sitting there listening to somebody and going, have I worked him before or haven't I? And who is it? When he finally gives his call sign, you go, oh, I've worked him before. So then you've got to move on. Whereas as you're tuning, your VFO, the pointer follows your VFO. So it will point to, so you stop and listen to somebody, and before you've actually heard what the call sign is, if you've worked them before, the call sign will be there and you'll go, I've worked them before, I just move on. Yeah. So it was really useful for that. But N1MM's got a manual that's 900 pages long, and it can be as easy or as complex as you like. But it's an excellent piece of software. Right. Any questions on that? How are we going for time? Right, we're about there. All right, so the focus is on tidying up the shack and just making it easier for everybody to operate. Now, so I thought I'd close with a picture of my shack.
You show off.
So you can see it's all screen based, but you've got to remember that there's 2 radios in that shack, 2 HF radios that are controlled. But the same software, there's Grid Tracker running there, Rex. But you can see I've had to push that onto the TV screen because I haven't got any room down here.
Get another monitor.
Right. The beauty of that type of, and the same thinking went into the shack in here as it went into that. And that's that if I add something, I don't have to change any of that. Any antenna changes happen remotely. The antenna switch is 60 metres from all of that. The coax runs are shorter because they all, you're not bringing 6 coaxes all the way from your antennas into the shack. They're only going as far as the antenna switch, which should be centrally located amongst your antennas. And any of those configuration changes that are required are done in software. So you can build a shack and you're not rebuilding it every 5 minutes.
That's very neat.
So that's the reason why I went that way, and that's the reason why we're pushing this the same way.
Yeah.
All right, any questions?
Is that, how many computers have you got there?
1.
Okay. And I take it you're a Collingwood supporter?
No, I just like magpies.
Okay.
Jeez.
I assume that the mug is actually purely decorative. It would normally be a glass of red, wouldn't it?
You don't know what's in it.
Only during a Zoom session.
You could be drinking that brand from Moriac, Brown Magpie.
Yeah.
No, it's a very nice readout, including the VFOs on the upper screens. That's really neat. Very
Well,
neat.
See, there's the VFO knob, the additional VFO knob. You can see how it's parked under there. There's the standard height paddle. So you can push all that back out of the way because the bench space is restricted.
Yeah.
But if I'm writing or doing something, I can just push all that stuff out of the way, and it allows me to use that bench space.
Have you got this copyrighted? Because my new shack will be a mirror of this
Oh, right, okay.
with less transceivers.
Can we do a deal for you?
Tell me, do you get a sore neck looking up so high?
You do with, these are at eye level,
Yes.
and they're the main operating screens. So these are really just bling.
Yeah.
They're
They're a mirror.
a mirror image of what's on the radio. Having said that, one of the next changes which I'm going to make is I didn't want to introduce any more keyboards. As soon as you introduce extra keyboards, you start making mistakes. So you just want one keyboard. So I recently replaced that keyboard, with one which will allow me to talk to 3 computers effectively. The computer that runs all of this was the subject of a presentation here. We actually built it here, and it's a gaming computer. It's got to have a fair bit of grunt to run all of that, but it does it really well. But there are applications which don't need to be part of that environment. Things that you get off the web all the time, and it can be propagation programs, it can be PSK reporters, the one that I use, where you can actually look at where your signal's being received on the web. So it doesn't need to be part of that environment. So what I'm planning to do is put some HDMI switches and introduce a second smaller computer that's just for internet type things, and be able to switch these screens between the radio and the computer. The only time that you use these is when you're on the other side of the room and you want to see things from a distance. Now, this shack is in a bedroom and it's got 3 sides, obviously, 3 walls. The wall that's directly opposite this is going to be the VHF satellite moon bounce. It's going to look similar to that, but it's going to have a different function. Now, if you're sitting over there and something happens on HF, you can turn around and look and you can see the spectrum display. So
Yeah.
I want to retain it, but yeah, you're right. You do get if you're looking particularly at that, but that's more, you know,
Not staring at it.
a cursory glance than an operational thing. All the operational things happen at eye level. Yep.
So where do I see, if I have a HF rig, what antenna it's connected to and which direction the antenna is?
Right, so if you draw a line down the middle, they're a mirror image of each other, Gerhard. So, unfortunately, this screenshot doesn't show the PST rotators. So the PST rotator window sits there and there. So this one tells you.
So which monitor is related to which radio?
So this monitor is for that radio.
Okay, and how do you see an indication in the shack, if you've never seen it before, that this rig is that monitor?
Well, you just assume that all of this is.
Vertical.
Yeah. So,
Above each other. Yeah.
So draw a line down the middle here,
Mm.
and they're a mirror image of each other. This is the antenna switching unit. This is a micro ham device as well, but it supports multiple antenna switches, and I'll give a talk on it one day because
Yeah,
it's
the
a
key
talk
thing is,
by
again,
itself.
If I have one rig on, I want to know what antenna I'm using in what direction. That's the first basic thing.
Okay, so you turn this radio on with this controller. This controller will only show you the valid antennas for the band that you're on. So along this bottom line, which is you can't see, it shows you the antennas that you've got available for that band. So if I went to HF, it would show me that I had a tri-bander and a dummy load. If it's 20 metres, I should say.
And where's the indication which one is connected, which one is using?
So,
It might be worth pointing out, reiterating that this is your shack home. It's not going to be the shack here.
yeah, that's.
I think Gerhard's.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
no, this is a fundamental question why I'm asking the question. So when you come in and you've never seen, if you're normal and radio operator, you want to see, there's the HF rig, and there's the antenna switch, and we've got antenna 1, 2, 3, that is the beam, that is the wire antenna, bang, boom.
Oh,
And
okay.
the
That's
very
all.
basics.
That's all automated. So when you select a band on the radio, the system picks the antenna. It picks the last used antenna for that band, but it only shows you on the. This is effectively the antenna switch controller. It does a lot more, but let's just treat it as the antenna switch controller. Now the radio talks to that and says, I'm on 20 metres. This says to me, on 20 metres you've got a TH6 and a dummy load, and that's it. And that's all it will show you.
And what is the indication where I'm connected? If I have 3 antennas, is there a screen which tells me the radio is now talking to this antenna?
Yep, here. So on this screen here, the antennas that you've got available for that band,
No, which I'm connected at present, the present.
yeah,
I turn the radio on and I want to see what antenna I'm connected
there's a red light below the one. There's
it's a red light.
yeah, there's a little, see that little red light's on? That will say TH6 and load.
That's
Yeah.
all
So,
visual
but it
interface.
always defaults to the last used antenna. when you go to
Defaults to the antenna I'm connected to right now.
for that band,
Yeah.
so it doesn't allow you to make mistakes. Let's go to 40 metres is probably a good example. On 40 metres at home, I have a dipole and I have a 4 square for 40.
Yeah.
So when I select 40 metres on the radio, this controller comes up and it tells me, it's got a description of the antennas, the selected antenna.
So there is an indicator
Yeah.
which antenna is selected, that's all.
Yeah, I know, it's all,
Yeah.
that's all handled by, and this is old technology, but there's nothing around in the modern era, that matches the flexibility of this.
Yeah.
And I'll give a talk about it later, but it's got distributed antenna switches. Like, it doesn't have one antenna switch that's in one location. I've got 3 2x8 antenna switches which are in 3 different locations around the block. And when I add a new antenna, I just have to find the closest spare port on an antenna switch and then configure the software so that it routes me to that switch. Anyway, it's probably a bit deep for this, but
Just an indicator, just the feedback.
yeah.
That's what is connected, that's what you're using. That's
And if the antenna's got a rotator attached to it, it will display that on PST rotator. If I change bands and the next band has an antenna on a different tower, it will just automatically switch the input to PST rotator to that tower. So what you're looking at there is the band that you're, is the rotator that's associated with the antenna that you've selected. That's probably the best way to put it.
It's just a basic feedback. There's the radio, that's an antenna, and that's where you connect it, and that's it.
Yeah, it's.
Just
I'll-
to have
I'll
the
give
visual interface.
I'll give a talk about it at some stage, and you'll, it's very complex, but it's complex behind the scenes means simple from an operator's point of view. So,
If you know what you're looking at, yeah.
all right. Any further questions?
I might add here, Peter, that the PW2 controller gives a pictorial description of what antenna you're connected to at the time,
As well. Yep.
controlled from the radio.
Yep.
For here, this
Yeah.
is the next step from here.
Yeah. You haven't got enough real estate here to justify something like that. You know, we're talking about multiple towers. We're talking about multiple antennas. And if you tried to manage them in a conventional way with switch boxes and, you know, it would just be a nightmare.
Or just crawling around the back.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, that's
Pretty
it.
much it.
Yep.
Right. Excuse me. Do we have an estimate of when our shack will be up and running?
Oh, probably Wednesday.
Oh, great.
It won't have
Before the
one.
migration.
Yeah, it won't have 80 or 160.
Of course.
But it'll be at a point where people can start working on the antennas and won't have to fiddle with any of the hardware.
Excellent.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Class is missed.
The next part. Are we still on the stream?
What about we kill the live stream now?
We'll kill the stream. Yep.